This actually wasn't done too long ago. I think this is one of the projects. I love how my workers would always wave, you know. It doesn't really have spiral wheels or anything. I think this was done in like the 1960s or 1950s. Someone put the homies on there. But still. Anyway, 170, yeah. I told them when they were making the film, another thing is the safety cages. I was always really fussy about the safety cages. But I always, whenever they're making my films, I would always say, list the workers, how many workers of this and how many workers of those, because it's always forgotten that there were 300 Frenchmen there. Because sometimes they would say, oh, it's German, and it's like, well, there was 80 Germans there, and there was like 1,700 Irishmen there, or something like that. It's like I always wanted the numbers of the workers, because I hated it how they always said, well, it was a French thing. It's like, no, it was a all thing. There were Irish, there were German, sometimes there were Chinese there were women there. So I'd always say, list how many of, like, I think that was a girl right there, maybe. Anyway, there were girls on a lot of my job sites that would do all the same jobs as the men. Yeah. Anyway, and I loved it. God, they're crazy. Ford, Chino. Anyway, yeah, but I loved how they all worked together. My Irishmen, or whatever, people. Anyway, this is 1968 or 70, I think. I forget. Maybe it's later. I don't know. Anyway, it's one of my epic builds. I had all these epic builds. Yeah, my cup design. We tried the cup design to see if it would work better than like one long thing. I was getting a little overcautious sometimes. I was a little overcautious sometimes with the thing, and sometimes we did cups, and sometimes we did like one big long wall, and stuff like that. And I did a lot of different dams. I paid for them. They always, some people say, oh, it's just a dam. It's like, no, every dam was for a purpose, like a smelter, or, usually it was mining equipment and smelting, because, like I say, in order to get the good stuff, you got to really heat up the rock. You got to get that rock really hot, and so that takes a lot of power. So every time we built a dam, there was always a water channel. Like with every dam, there was always like a tunnel that went. Like I said, on a lot of these dams, we dig the dam, and then we drop down 1,000 feet or like 300 feet, and then we would tunnel this way. And what we'd do is we'd just build up all the ore somewhere, and then from all the mining, and then we'd start the I forget how we did it. Well, we usually wanted to. Well, sometimes we'd use steam to smelt some material, and then we'd save some for the real cook-off, which was when the dam was full of water, because we always needed like a couple hundred feet of water, and then we'd get like 1,000 foot of running drop, and then we'd go into those motors, and then we'd get our power, and then our smelter would get really nice and hot, and then we'd start getting the really good stuff. The titanium and aluminum and all the good metals. Like I said, I was so effing wealthy, like so rich. It was ridiculous, because I just went from one dam to the next. So, and once you have two dams underneath your belt, where it's like, when you own two dams, it's like, because like I was like the world's LS was like the leading supplier of steel and metal. And the really good stuff, like gold. Like if you bought gold any time in the past, you were buying it from me. So, anyway, it wasn't really about the money. It was about and it really wasn't even about the glory. It was just about, yes, it's about me proving my point, because like I told them that they needed a lot of. I told them that water was better. I told them it was a better investment. I said, do this and you will not regret it. The only way to get power is like this. I don't care how much work it is. Like at some point in time, I said, I don't care how much work it is. You're going to thank me later on. Just trust me. Build one. And they were like, okay, we're going to build one. And then once they built one, and they started, then they're like, and then they started, then we were really started building, and then, yeah. And then, like I say, later on, everyone was just laughing. They were just laughing because it was just like, you were right. You were right about everything. And they just said how I was right. And I was like, and I relaxed for a minute. I was like, thank you. That really meant a lot to me, to my people. Because there's so many people that just talk shit about me and just said, who cares about this guy, blah, 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 and all this and other stuff. Or they said I wasn't real. And it's like, and now it's just, it's also, a lot of people were also annoyed at how they were treating me.